Hi, I'm Simon from Hope Woodturning, and we're now doing a more advanced form of faceplate turning, and we're going to do a large platter, whether it's for the table or for hanging, but that's the project we're doing. So it's very important when you get much larger pieces on that you get the speed correct. What I've done is just change to the low ratio, which is very easy to do on the Stratos 230. When you get the larger pieces, you need the lower ratio for higher torque. And also a nice feature on the lathe, it has a toggle switch here, which you can which you can turn on for fast or low ramp speed. So we're going to start at a low speed and see how balanced it is. Bit of a wobble there, so we're just going to go beyond that slightly, but don't go too fast. The first thing we need to do is just true up this area here, and then hopefully we can get a higher speed if we need. But that's the first job, is just to true this area up here. So I have my swept back grinds, make sure everything's fully locked down, and we're just going to line the bevel up here with the edge and just very, very slowly cut across. And again. And now that's running true. So then we're going to make sure that the tool rest is at the correct height. I like to just use a little pencil here, and you can sort of gauge where that is. We just want to go up very, very slightly. And then we can use the swept back wing to start taking some cuts. Now the next stage is just to mark where your spigot's going to go, and then we can start taking waste material away and start working on the shape. This needs to be marked out at 85mm. Slightly bigger, about here. Now, we'll start taking some of the waste away. See if I can get a little bit more speed. We can. So the flute over at 45 and the handle down. Now the shape's going to be a nice ogee shape. We're going to have a curve coming around here. I plan to have a small bead, and then the curve's going to go back. So a little bit more waste to come away. I'll just move the rest slightly closer. Just looking at the horizon to see your shape. This curve's coming up okay, but it needs to go further more this way. This part is too big in proportion to this part. So we're just going to bring this curve round more here and then come back. Something like this. Now at this stage it's only rough cutting. So before we go too deep, we need to start doing some finishing cuts. So I'm going to establish where the clean edge is, and then we'll show you how to do some finishing cuts. So I'm just going to make sure this area here is clean. I'm going to come up and take a small cut here. Be very careful with this because that can catch, so be careful. I'll show you how to do that, but we need to establish where the clean edge is. So a bit of fine tuning here. And very, very gently just come to this edge here. So we have a clean edge and we know what shape we have to work with. So the next step is to get this part here correct. I'm going to use the detail tool. I'm going to do a small dovetail and I'm going to do some shear cutting to get that corner correct. Slightly a bit more speed if you can. Doing some shear scraping just to get that bit tidy right in the corner. That's correct. You can see we have a nice clean cut. Do you want to come in and just have a look? Yeah, because we've shear cutting's up at an angle like this, we have a nice clean finish here. And now from this point we can get the bevel rubbing and we can make a nice finishing cut to finish the shape. So let's get the rest in position. I'm going to use the straight grind, which is on the other end of this bowl gouge. This is how I do my bowl turning. I use the fingernail for rough cutting and I use the straight grind for finishing cuts. So on the clean area we can get the bevel rubbing. Small amount of pressure to keep the bevel rubbing on the wood. If it starts to bounce like it's doing there, go back and cut beneath it and re-establish a clean cut. I've just lost the cut there, so we're just going to go back slightly, bevel rubbing, just pick up the cuts by moving the handle round. There's a little step where we're going to put a small bead, so we'll just move the rest round. Like so. So we have some bevel rubs on here. It's a really nice bit of black American walnut, by the way. So we're really going to try and do our best job with this and get a really nice shape. But we've got some different options now to try and fine tune the shape. If there's slight bumps, we can use negative rakes to tidy those out, or we can use a more advanced way of finishing, and that's shear scraping. We can use a skew up on its edge. Quite often I like to just use my detail tool, the small skew, and I find that perfect just for getting up and fine tuning and doing some shear scraping. So we'll just show you that first. So this is my detail tool with the skew. What I like to do first of all, you're going to use it like this. I turn it upside down and I force a burr on the front edge, just with a diamond file. It likes to work at a fast speed, so we'll see if we can get the speed slightly faster. Yep, so we're now running about 1500 RPM. The skew comes up at an angle and we're now shear scraping. This takes much control, and you have to get the tool in exactly the right position. The edge mustn't dig in or the bottom mustn't dig in. But if you get it correct, you can get a really clean finish, and it would save quite a bit of sanding. You can see the shavings coming off. You're getting a really nice clean cut, and hopefully I can show you that on a piece of wood. Okay, so that is nice and clean, and we've taken away the hardening on the surface from the bevel rubs. There's no tears in the grain, and that would sand very easily. Now I'll just finish this area here, and then we'll perhaps show you with the negative rake tools another way of getting a better finish. I can demonstrate actually. You can see these bevel rubs on here, and I can actually feel how rough that is compared to here. Do you want to have a go, Jens? Can you see that? Yeah. Yeah. You can see how rough that is and smooth from shear scraping. But we'll clean this area up and we'll come back and have a look. Yeah. So this is a more advanced way of finishing. It's not for everybody. It works for me, and I find it's a really good technique to have. Yep, so you can see in this area here, all the fibres have laid down. It's very smooth, and we've really tidied that up, and that would save quite a bit of sanding. Now just on this area, I'll just show you one of my negative rake scrapers. Okay, now I've just sharpened my negative rake. There is a video available, so if you want to see how they're sharpened, please click on the link. So we've just finished this area here. It cuts on the centre line. This is parallel. It's a very easy tool. The weight of this is very gently. You can see the shavings coming off, and it leaves a really nice finish. So the next job is to get this sanded. I'm going to use the 57mm rotary sander, Pro Sander. We'll get this sanded up. I'll just do one grit and then off film I'll get it all finished. But we need to sand it before we actually put the bead, because if we put the bead in first, we're likely to sand it away. So let's get going with the sanding. Now this is sanded to 600. I'm going to put a small bead in here, and I'm going to use my detail tool to do that. Again, I used the skew, and you can use it this way, upside down. You could do a little bit of shear scraping, and that's how I get some fine detail like this bead. So we get the speed going fairly high. Nice and gently, we just start to get the beads laid out, like so. Roll that over, yeah, and that bead's done. It just needs some light sanding just to blend it all in. So that's the bead all sanded up. If you just want to come in and just have a closer look. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to put a small dimple here with the edge of the detail tool, and then we're ready to turn it around and start turning the face. So what we're going to do with this is just show something a bit different and a bit more difficult to do, but great fun and great results. So I'm going to cut a ring of sycamore, insert it in the front, maybe make it a bit thinner, a bit more stylish, but we'll talk about the techniques and show you how to do this. So the next stage, we've remounted this into the chuck. We need to true the front off. I have my bit of sycamore, and from this we'll take our ring, which we're going to insert into the walnut. Now it might seem a bit of a waste, but the ring that we're going to take out is the waste section if this was the next bowl, or sometimes I have nice bits of sycamore that I would use for the entire piece just to make rings for this project. So first stage is to drop that out the way and just true the front of this blank off. So I'm just going to use my swept back wing, and we're just going to trim the face off. I can turn it around and make a bevel rubbing cut. Okay, that's fine, that's enough. And now what we need to do is sort of work out where we want the sycamore ring. So proportionally, I normally say, if this is the radius, around about 1/3 of the radius. Not the diameter, because it's too big. So 1/3 of the radius is normally about right. So something about, if you say from the radius, 1/3, roughly here, then I think proportion-wise, this just works quite nice for a platter. It's going to be about 10mm wide. So this part here will be sycamore, and then the bowl will be sort of here, scooping down to the centre. What we need to do is just take those two measurements, make sure you go across the centre, just roughly. So 245, and we'll make it about 10mm thick. We've got our measurement. What we'll do is we'll get the sycamore mounted, and we'll show you how to cut the ring ready for inserting into the bowl. So the next stage is to true this and to true this. So we'll do this very quickly. We'll just put a pencil line in the centre, and this is very easy to then measure out exactly what we need. So it was 245, I'll just go half of that, so it's 122.5, 22.5, which is here. Just double check our measurement. 245, 246, but that's fine. And then we're going to make it 10mm or so bigger. Okay, so that's going to be our ring. Now what we need to do, this part here is actually the bit that's going to be into the bowl. So this is the back part. So we need to cut each side of this line, but we need to do a slight taper. So we're going to cut in here, slight taper, cut in here, slight taper. Not this much, it only needs to be maybe 5 degrees, but just to give you some explanation, I've increased the taper to show you. So taper here and taper here, but only 5 degrees. Now I like to use the other end of the detail tool, which is the round bar. You could also use a, say, parting tool. The reason I like this is because when we come to do the finishing cuts, we can actually make a nice clean cut because it cuts parallel. You can't do this with a square section, it rides off, but you can get a very nice straight edge with this tool. So when we start to go in, I have to wobble the tool left to right. And I'm going to go in about 5 or 6 mil, about the depth of the bevel. So I can cut this side. And then I'm just going to do some nice finishing cuts. So because it's a round bar, I can cut nice and parallel. So here is 90 degrees. We come over 5 degrees, like so, and just cut a nice straight finishing cut. Maybe one more to make sure it's nice and clean. Same on this side. So here is 90 degrees, we come this way 5 degrees. One more nice finishing cut. Perfect, and let's stop and have a look. So what I'm looking at is any tears in the grain. I can't see any, it looks nice and clean. And the same on the inside edge. I'm not looking on this face, this is going to go into the bowl. I'm looking into the side to make sure there's no tears, and it looks fine. So the next stage is to put some tape on here, and we need to do that for safety reasons. Masking tape, we just need to rip off some small pieces, like so. Takes a little time. Now I have masking tape on this back of the band. I'll just take this waste away. Just use that with the bowl gouge. And now I'm going to use the thin parting tool just to part this off. Make sure you make 2 cuts. So you step down side by side, so that doesn't get too hot. When we get close, we're actually going to listen for the tone to change, and you can hear like a hacksaw blade going through a piece of metal. The noise changes, and this is what I'm listening for. Yeah, I could hear it. So we have our ring. Mark on here, so you know that this is upside down. Yeah, this is our ring here, and it's going to go into a groove this way into the, or that way, onto the platter. So now we need to figure out what size groove to cut to actually make this fitted. Now, these were just guidelines to get a rough proportion. So the trick is now is to take this inside edge here, where my thumb is, make it on the inside edge, just on the pencil line, and then we look to see where the pencil line is at the top. Okay, so you can see we are maybe 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters out. So from that I can tell that we need to make this ring bigger. And normally what I do is the pencil line in the middle of this is the correct. Yep. So pencil line in the middle of this should make this the correct size. So we just draw this line. And now when we put the ring on that line, I can take it to the top. And yes, this is correct. I can see that that is on the line. Yeah? Yep. Now hold with the thumb and we draw this line, the outside edge. So slightly bigger than what was there. We can draw this size. So the size that we need is the actual, this size here to this size here. Yeah, that is what we're going to cut out. So you have to remember the lines. It can get confusing if you put too many lines on, but I know I want to go from this outside to this line here. Now what I'm going to do is make a small incision, only 1 millimeter deep, and then I'm going to test it. Don't make it 5 millimeters deep, because if it's wrong, then you have to take 5 millimeters away. So just do a small incision, 1 millimeter, and then we can test it. So I'm just going to start in the middle. And just make it 1 millimeter deep. We need to go from this line here to just on the inside here. And also I put a slight taper also. So remember your crosses that go this way, and we can see if this starts to fit. Okay. Yeah, it's just starting to go in. That's quite close. We just need to make it slightly wider. Sometimes you have to look to see if you need some on the inside taken away. Sometimes you need some on the outside taken away. On this case, I believe it's some on the inside, so I'll just make a small adjustment. Yeah, and now we've started to fit. So there is just a very, very, very tiny gap on the outside edge. So when I make the groove deeper, I will make a taper, and this will push in and make it nice and tight, so there'll be no gaps. So we'll make it deeper. Remember to do your taper. And now it should start to go in much deeper. Pretty good. Don't push it in too much because you won't be able to get it out before gluing, okay? So I can tell that that is pushing in very, very nicely. And if we tapped this with the back of the handle once the glue, then it's going to be correct. Yeah, looking good. So let me get some glue and I'll show you how to glue it in place. So now we're going to get this glued into place. What we need to do, it's very important, is to make sure the grain is in the right direction. So I can see the grain is going this way. So I'll just put some lines on here. And I can see on here that the grain is going this way. Yeah, very easy to see. You need to make sure that the grain is in line so that if there's any movement in the wood, it moves together. If it's opposite, if this cups this way, this wants to cup the other way, and it could move. So you have to get the orientation correct. Now, you could use PVA glue. I just use thin super glue. Some of these ones with rings I've done 10, 15 years ago, and they're still good. So it works for me, and I'm going to use that. So be very careful when you're using glue on the lathe. And what I'm going to do is just run some down on this edge here, and then I'm going to come this way and run some on that edge, some in the center, like so. Keep this moving so the run doesn't suddenly come to the bottom and come out. And then we're going to line up very, very quickly like so. And we're just going to tap that in, support this, and just tap this in. Now you can hear the noise suddenly go deep, and that means it's either reached the bottom. Yeah, here's loose, and then keep tapping, and it goes solid. So yeah. So I know that it's gone to the bottom, and this is correct. Now, what I do is also run some thin on the outside so it soaks in. Capillary action will take the glue down the side also. Run some down there. Run some down there. Keep the lathe moving. Use some activator. A little bit more. And now we're just going to leave that. Even though we've used activator, it's activated the outside edge, but it still might be wet on the inside. And the trouble is, if you don't leave it for 5 or 10 minutes, you may cut the outside edge and some super glue can still come out. So when we're actually cutting this, we'll leave it now for 5 minutes, but when we're cutting it, always look out for some fresh glue, and if you see it, stop and add some more activator. So now that's had plenty of time to dry, still keep an eye out when you start cutting across here, but to begin with I'm just going to take most of the centre of the bowl out. Not all of it, just the majority. Then I'm going to come and finish this, and then we're going to come back and finish the inside. So we start turning the centre of the bowl. We just need to stop and check our wall thickness here. I can feel that. We've still got some time to go. We'll take this back just a little bit more. So that looks about right. So we're going to get this bit set. What I like to do is always have a chamfer on this edge. So we start cutting here just to get the chamfer. I just think it looks better. Then nice and gently we can start shear cutting just with the swept back gouge. And I'm going to put a slight curve on here. Okay, let's stop and have a look. Tiny bit of glue on here, so just a little bit more to go depth-wise. I don't want to take too much off, so I think what I'm going to do is do some shear scraping on there, just to take that down the next 0.5 millimetre or so and get that finished. So I'm going to use my detail tool. We're going to shear scrape this way. So I'm going to turn it upside down and put a burr on there. High speed. Just a little bit of bounce there, so we just need to take a little bit more off this area here. And let's stop and have a look. Yeah, perfect. And just have a look at that finish from shear scraping. It won't take much sanding at all. So I'm really happy with the outside edge. We're going to finish doing the inside of the bowl now. Now thickness wise we're getting close down there, but we can measure that with the calipers. We'll take the centre out, we do some more cuts, we measure, and then we can get it all sanded. Now remember what I was saying in the previous video, that I like to cut down like this, and this central part I come back pushing this way because it pushes the bowl onto the chuck. Man, this wood is really hard.
Blunt again, or?
Yeah, getting there. So I'll just check the wall thickness. Oh yeah, 16 mil. It's quite even, but it's still quite thick. So I'm just going to reduce the thickness down slightly. We'll check again. $9mm, slightly less. Okay, I'm happy with this. Now, quite often to finish the bottom of a large platter, it's quite hard to get this nice and flat. And rather than using a swept back grind, because you have a very pointed nose, I like to use the other grind. Because the bevel's bigger, it's easier to actually cut in a straight line and to do a nice finishing cut. Perfect. Just needs a little bit more off the centre. And now we're ready for sanding. Okay, now we're going to get this sanded up. I'll just do 120 grit and then off camera we'll finish it completely. Be very careful not to sand too much. We don't want any heat on the outside. On the inside, you have to move across the centre. And then we go up into the corner here. Now this pad might be too big to get round the corner, but I can use a smaller arbor to do that. Just be careful not to get too hot. Okay, we'll finish off and then we'll show you what it looks like once it's fully sanded. I'm now going to finish the bottom. I'll make a few cuts and show you how to turn the bottom away, but if you want to see how to do this in full, then please check out the previous video when we went through in a bit more detail. So I hope you really enjoyed watching. I really thought that was a nice project to do. I'm really happy with the result. All that's ready to do is the finish, and then all the colours will really jump out and that will show the effect. All the bottom is finished, so I'm just going to do some oiling to show you the finished article. You can see all the colours starting to come from the walnut, and now when we finish on the outside, the sycamore also really jumps out in colour. Please come back and watch some more of my videos. There'll be some more coming soon on various items. I hope you like watching. Let me just show you what this looks like and wipe the surface oil away. Of course this needs to dry, it's very shiny right now. It will soak in a little bit, but that's the finished result. I hope you enjoyed watching and we'll see you soon.